Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into a place where the sun doesn't just shine, it scorches. Picture this. You're standing in the middle of an ancient Persian desert. The sun sits high like a flaming god, and the sand, it's so hot it could toast flatbread. Your robes cling to you with sweat, your tongue is basically a sandpaper popsicle, and the wind, well, it's not helping. It's less gentle breeze, and more hairdryer set to lava. You squint toward the horizon, wondering how anyone, let alone a civilization, managed to live in this absolute furnace. Oh, and spoiler alert. You probably wouldn't survive this. At least not without a trick or two up your very dusty sleeve. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing who else is wide awake right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the parched landscape of what was once the Persian Empire, land of poets, kings, and sand so hot it might be plotting your demise. Your feet crunch over gravel as you climb a dune, breath shallow and heavy. All around, the heat shimmers in waves, twisting the horizon into a mirage ballet. You reach the top and pause, because down below, nestled like a secret in the desert's embrace, is a village. Not just any village. This one's alive. Despite the infernal temperature, you see people walking outside, not fainting. They're dressed in flowing garments, yes, but their faces aren't slick with sweat. Kids play in shaded alleys. An old man snoozes under an archway with a cat curled beside him. And the buildings? They don't shimmer like scorched stone. They look cool. Literally. The homes are made from mud brick, baked in the sun and stacked into curves and domes that seem to melt into the earth. You expect them to be ovens, but when you step inside one, it's like slipping into a clay cave of relief. The air isn't freezing, but compared to the heat outside, it's like wandering into a whisper. The thick walls hug you with silence, and a soft draft brushes past your ankles. This place isn't fighting the heat. It's mastering it. Here's a fun mainstream fact. The Persian Empire, especially under the Achaemenids and later the Sassanids, ruled over vast stretches of land from the Indus Valley to the Aegean Sea. These weren't just dusty warlords with swords. They were engineers, architects, and absolute nerds about airflow. And here's your first quirky tidbit. Some Persian towns were so good at keeping cool, invading armies would literally camp outside rather than enter and feel like amateurs. One general supposedly claimed the buildings were built by wind spirits. Real? Who knows? But imagine trying to conquer a city and getting climate envy instead. As you wander through narrow lanes, you notice something peculiar. The windows are small and high up. Doorways are shaded. The streets are angled, twisting, coiling. Turns out this isn't bad urban planning. It's intentional. The homes are built with one goal. Don't let the sun win. You duck under a low archway and emerge into a courtyard shaded by a canvas. A jug of water sits in the corner, its clay skin beaded with cool condensation. You press a hand against the wall, it's cool. How? Historians still argue whether early Persian architects stumbled into this genius by accident or studied the behavior of wind and sun with eerie precision. But one thing's certain, these folks were not winging it. They designed homes that worked with nature, not against it. Mud brick isn't just dirt. When packed and dried right, it acts as a thermal sponge, absorbing heat during the day, slowly releasing it at night. Like the Earth's own thermostat. No batteries required. You sit under a date palm, finally catching your breath, watching a little girl chase a chicken through a shady corridor. Overhead, a tower juts into the sky like a clay finger pointing to heaven. It looks odd, too tall, too narrow. You squint. Is it hollow? Is that a hole? You've just seen your first badger, a wind catcher. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. You'll climb one soon enough. For now, take in the wonder. A desert civilization that didn't just endure the heat, it harnessed it. And they did it with no electricity, no fans, and definitely no freon. Just mud, water, air, and a refusal to sweat through another summer. You're starting to get it now. This wasn't magic. It was science, soaked in sunlight and molded by hand. And suddenly modern life feels a bit overcomplicated. You step deeper into the village, feet dragging now, not from fatigue but from awe. The air still clings warm to your skin, but not oppressive. Not the kind that feels like you're being wrapped in hot, wet laundry. No, here it's different. It's like the heat respects the architecture, like it's been trained to stay outside. You run your fingers along the side of another house. And again, cool clay. It's the second miracle of the day. The structures around you seem almost alive. Rounded edges, bulbous domes, thick mud brick walls. It's not just for looks. Every curve is calculated. Every surface speaks to centuries of trial, error, and an intimate relationship with nature. These aren't cookie-cutter homes. They're living organisms, breathing with the day and sighing with the night. You duck into another home. This one a little larger. Maybe a merchant's place. The inner walls curve upward, funneling warm air up and out. There's a central courtyard again, this time planted with herbs and shaded by a stretched cloth. You swear you can smell mint. A pitcher of water wrapped in a wet cloth rests in the corner, glistening with dew like it's trying to join a skincare ad. Someone figured out ancient fridge technology. The brilliance of mud brick begins to really sink in. You sit cross-legged on a cool floor, and let's be honest, it's better than the concrete jungle you left behind in the 21st century. These bricks, made from earth and straw, are sun-dried until they harden like gentle armor. They're porous, which means they let air and moisture move through slowly like a secret. This breathability regulates indoor temperatures. So while it's lava outside, it's lullaby inside. Mainstream historical fact incoming. Archaeological records show that mud brick construction in Persia dates back thousands of years. Long before electricity, before steel, before even the great empire solidified. From ancient Elam to the rise of Achaemenids, these bricks were the backbone of Persian life, literally and culturally. Now the quirky bit. Some homes had seasonal rooms. You'd sleep upstairs in summer to catch the breeze and then move downstairs for winter, burrowing into the mud's toasty embrace like a desert hobbit. Basically, your ancestors were living in rotating HVAC systems. Centuries before acronyms were cool. You glance up again. The ceilings are high, often dome-shaped. Not because someone likes circles, but because heat rises. Domes trap the hot air at the top while cooler air sinks around you. Science, but with swag. Also, domes resist earthquakes better. Win-win. You poke your head outside again, and the sun promptly slaps your forehead as if to remind you who's boss. Yet within seconds, a breeze slides in from a nearby alley. Light, cool, and suspiciously well-timed. You turn, eyes drawn to another structure. A tall chimney-like tower attached to a home. It's hollow inside, its top open to the sky. You don't know it yet, but you're looking at the start of Persian climate wizardry. Those mysterious badgers you saw earlier. Historians still debate the exact origins of the windcatcher. Did it begin in Persia and spread east and west? Or did it evolve independently in places like Egypt or the Indus Valley, popping up like heat-fighting mushrooms wherever people got tired of melting? No one's sure. What is certain, Persia mastered it. Even the alleys themselves are smart. They're narrow, not just for defense, but because tight corridors stay shaded. They funnel breezes, creating natural wind tunnels that snake cool air through homes and streets. And their alignment, oh, it's not random. Many face prevailing wind directions. You might think you're wandering at random, but someone centuries ago designed your footsteps. You pause to watch a young boy splash water on the ground outside a shop. First, it seems like he's just playing. But you notice how the nearby wall feels cooler as a result. That water's not wasted. It's performing evaporative cooling like an ancient swamp cooler. Even the simplest acts here are part of the grand strategy. Keep the heat at bay. And here's a fun little local tidbit. Some Persian homes would hang wet reed mats over their doors and windows. As the dry desert air passed through, it cooled, like nature's own air conditioner minus the energy bill. It's the sort of clever life hack your modern apartment desperately wishes it had. Inside a shaded tea house, you sit with a local elder. He speaks in a slow, rich cadence, telling you stories about the old days, when summers were brutal but people didn't hide indoors with AC. They built coolness into their lives, into their walls, into their routines. Tea was served hot, oddly enough, to trigger internal cooling. Clothes were loose, water jugs were porous, and naps, well, those were practically sacred. You sip a cup, letting the bitter herbs roll over your tongue, and notice again how perfectly comfortable it is inside this mud-built refuge. No fans, no wires. Just millennia of architectural wisdom whispering through the walls. You lean back against the wall and listen. The building hums. Not with machinery but with stillness. A kind of peace that only exists when a home isn't at war with its climate. And you begin to understand. This wasn't just survival. This was style, soul, and science wrapped in clay and sun. The tower looms above you now, its pale mud brick sides glowing in the afternoon light. It's elegant, tall, and just a little mysterious, like the architectural version of that one guy at a party who never speaks but somehow steals the show. You crane your neck, shielding your eyes from the sun. It rises like a chimney but doesn't belch smoke. Instead, it pulls in silence. Curiosity grabs you by the ankle. You duck through a low door and step inside the house it's attached to. Once again, that whisper of cool air greets your cheeks like a loyal pet. It flows through the rooms without effort, dancing around corners and under doorways. But your eyes are locked on the stairwell that spirals up toward the tower. Time to investigate. You climb slowly. The stairs are narrow and steep, carved into the mud like veins through bone. As you ascend, the temperature subtly changes. The air up here is still, but not dead. Wait. Pause before the breeze. You reach the top chamber and step into the belly of the tower. And there it is, the open mouth at the top. It's not just a hole in the ceiling. It's angled just so, catching wind from the north, the direction Persians knew carried the coolest breezes. This isn't luck. It's design. You stand still and feel it. An invisible river of air pouring down toward the rooms below. The shape of the tower creates a pressure differential, drawing warm air up and out, while cool air flows in to replace it. It's a passive system. No buttons. No humming fans. Just physics with a dash of desert wizardry. Mainstream historical moment. These towers, called badgers or wind catchers, were used extensively throughout ancient Persia, especially in cities like Yazd, where temperatures could exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius for the metric crew. And some of these towers were over 30 feet tall enough to scoop wind from above neighboring rooftops. But wait, it gets better. Some towers had multiple openings, each facing a different direction. Depending on the wind, one side would draw it in while the others expelled stale, hot air. Persian engineers built in switches. With mud and math. Try that with your modern thermostat. Now for the quirky bit. Some wind catchers were even connected to underground water channels called canets, but we'll get to those beauties soon. For now, just know that some towers didn't just catch wind, they cooled it as it passed over water, acting like natural refrigeration tubes before the word refrigeration even existed. You press your hand against the inner wall. Smooth and cool. The draft moves past your skin like a silk scarf. Below you, the rooms breathe literally. As you climb back down, you feel like you've stepped out of a sci-fi novel written by a hydrology professor with a thing for ancient elegance. And yes, historians still argue whether Persia invented the very first wind tower or borrowed and perfected a design from neighboring regions. Was it Mesopotamia? Egypt? Some obscure but brilliant tribe that left no trace? No one agrees. But most scholars nod respectfully toward Persia for taking the idea and turning it into an art form. Back at ground level, you wander through another home, this one equipped with a double wind catcher. 2 towers flanking a central dome. It's absurdly cool inside. You half expect to see penguins waddling by. A cat lounges on a pillow near a wall vent, fur gently ruffled by the incoming breeze. If cats are choosing the spot, you know it's primo real estate. Suddenly, you're aware of how noisy modern comfort has become. fans, air conditioners, compressors. All of them whirring and clicking. Here silence is the luxury. The house breathes like a meditating monk. No carbon footprint, no burnout. Just balance. One woman shows you a trick, placing an oil lamp near a low vent. The flame bends in the draft, dancing toward the flow. She smiles, watching your eyes widen. It's her version of a wind gauge. Her ancestors weren't just engineers. They were intuitive scientists. And there's something deeply human about it all. These towers didn't just cool homes, they shaped lifestyles. Families gathered in rooms specifically chosen for airflow. Children learned which tower caught the breeze at dawn and which one worked best at dusk. The architecture wasn't a backdrop to life. It was life. You take a moment to sit in one of these breeze-fed rooms, stretched out on a woven mat. Overhead, the tower sighs with the wind, and your eyes flutter closed. Who needs Alexa when your ceiling literally responds to the weather? Your final realization. These ancient structures weren't primitive. They were optimized. And in a world facing a climate crisis, maybe, just maybe, we were smarter before electricity. You wake to the soft sound of birdsong, the kind that doesn't blare through car alarms or buzzing phones, but just exists. A peaceful reminder that time still flows, even in places where the world seems to have paused. The room you dozed in is cool. Cooler than it has any right to be, considering the sun has officially gone full rage mode outside. The badger still hums with a steady, whispering breath overhead. And now that you've mastered the skies, it's time to go underground. You're led through the village by a boy no older than 10, barefoot, grinning like he knows something you don't. He beckons you past homes and wells, down a narrow stone path until there. Tucked behind an unassuming wall is a tunnel entrance. Dark, arched, and dipping gently below the surface. It's cool at the mouth of the tunnel. Suspiciously cool. Like nature's air conditioning unit has been cranked up to chill, just for you. You duck your head and step inside. Welcome to the Khanate. This is where Persia's climate genius truly shines. See, centuries ago, maybe as far back as 1000 BCE, Persians began carving gently sloped tunnels deep into the earth to tap into underground water tables. These tunnels stretched for miles, often starting in the mountains and ending in the desert cities far below. And gravity, that was the pump. No fuel, no shouting at clogged filters, just a gentle slope and patience. Mainstream fact. Khanates provided consistent water to cities, farms, and homes across the empire. Some still work today. Let that sink in. Literal Bronze Age plumbing still quietly doing its job while your modern sink can't go 2 years without a hissy fit. The tunnel you're in now is dry, used for tours or perhaps retired from centuries of service. But you can still feel the temperature difference. It's at least 10 degrees cooler in here. The walls are damp, faintly glistening. The air is earthy, rich with that stone and clay scent no candle will ever get quite right. You keep walking deeper. The boy leads the way, torch in hand, casting shadows that wobble like fish in a pond. You pass side shafts, vertical chimneys that open to the surface above, spaced like ancient breathing holes. These aren't just for digging. They also let in air, regulating the pressure and helping evaporate some of the moisture into the air. In places where Khanates connected to homes or courtyards, they'd bring in not just water, but cool air too. Now for the fringe flavor. Some believe these Khanates were more than utilities, they were sacred. Ancient Zoroastrian rituals sometimes took place near their mouths, where water bubbled up into pools known as sardabs. These cold rooms weren't just summer hideaways. They were where people meditated, kept food, and rumor has it, even brewed secret wines. Forbidden, of course, which only made it more popular. Historians still debate whether the original Khanate engineers came from the east, possibly inspired by early irrigation systems in ancient Mesopotamia, or if Persians developed it independently. Either way, Persia scaled it like a boss. Hundreds of miles of underground veins feeding cities that never should have existed where they did. You reach the end of the tunnel, where water once surfaced. It's quiet. A pool of black, motionless water sits in a shallow stone basin. In ancient times, people would collect water here in clay jugs, the shape of the vessels perfectly suited for stacking, storing, and keeping cool. These jugs were often left in shady corners, naturally chilled by both the air and the water's touch. You press your palm against the basin's edge. It's cold, startlingly so. Even now, with the world above broiling, this subterranean chamber holds firm, like a stone refrigerator whispering, "I got you." You can see now how the entire system worked as a whole. Wind catchers above, cannots below, one drawing cool air in from the sky, the other pushing it up from the earth. Homes weren't just houses, they were pressure-managed ecosystems. Desert-built lungs, breathing, sighing, cycling energy. Outside, you finally emerge into a shaded courtyard connected to the canot. You spot a structure nearby, a low building with thick walls and no windows. Just a single door and a tiny roofed opening above. You step inside and stop. This is next-level chill. You've found a yakshul. But hold that thought, because now you're beginning to see it. The genius wasn't just in the separate elements, but how Persians connected them. They didn't isolate airflow, water flow, and storage. They blended it, layered it, wove it into daily life. A passive thermal symphony. And you haven't even hit the crescendo yet. You step into the yakshul like you're entering a forgotten temple. And in a way, you are. The air hits you like a polite slap of winter. Not bone-chilling, but definitely enough to make you blink twice and mutter, "No way." After everything you've seen, mud brick magic, breeze harvesting towers, water whispering tunnels, now the ancient Persians want to show you they also built freezers. In the middle of the desert, before electricity. Naturally, this round, dome-shaped building with thick, sloping walls looks deceptively simple from the outside. But inside it's a different story. You find yourself standing in a cavernous, egg-shaped chamber. The walls are over 2 meters thick in some places, made from a special mixture of sand, clay, egg whites, goat hair, ash, and lime. It's waterproof. It's heat-proof. It's, let's face it, basically ancient Tupperware. And here's the wild part. These structures could store ice harvested in winter all the way through summer. Mainstream historical flex. The word yakshul literally means ice pit, and Persians were using these structures as early as 400 BCE. Ice was collected during frigid desert nights or made artificially by diverting water into shallow canals at night to freeze, then storing it here. Entire blocks of ice would be hauled into the belly of the yakshul and sealed like treasure. You look down at the floor and spot the pit, deep, wide, and still cool to the touch. In its prime, this pit would have been packed with snow or ice, layered with straw or thatch, and kept sealed except when someone needed to chip off a chunk to cool drinks, preserve food, or treat heatstroke victims the old-fashioned way, with a frosty slap to the forehead. Now for the quirky twist. Some yakshuls had ceremonial uses. During special summer festivals, nobles would treat guests to chilled desserts or snow-cooled drinks. Imagine sipping cold pomegranate juice in the middle of July while your neighbors in Greece are still fanning themselves with palm leaves and bad decisions. The desert dwellers, it turns out, were living the iced life long before frappuccinos were cool. But let's rewind a bit. How did the ice even get in here in the first place? That's where the connected genius of Persian engineering shines again. Remember those cannots from before? Some yakshuls were built near cannots or even directly connected to them, allowing groundwater to cool the inner chamber or be used in nighttime ice-making pools. Other yakshuls sat beside long north-south running walls called shapestons. These shaded the water channels during the day and let them freeze at night in the dead calm winter air. No fans. No refrigerant gases. Just positioning, timing, and a lot of quietly smug confidence. And of course, historians still argue whether yakshuls were exclusively Persian inventions or adapted from older structures in Mesopotamia or Central Asia. Some even speculate about links to early ice pits in China. But the sheer scale and survival of Persian yakshuls, that's hard to beat. Some of these structures still stand today, weathered but proud like frozen fossils of ingenuity. You run your hand along the inner dome wall and shiver, not from the cold but from awe. The sloped walls weren't just pretty, they encouraged convection. Hot air rose and slid along the dome's interior, out through a tiny vent at the top. Meanwhile, cold air stayed low, trapped like a sleepy bear at the bottom. The structure managed itself like a self-aware climate bubble. You imagine the logistics: men carving ice from shallow pools at night, wrapping it in straw, and carrying it into the yachtshell before sunrise. Women preparing yogurt, milk, and honey treats to be chilled for special guests. Children daring each other to sneak inside for a peek. Because even in ancient Persia, someone had to shout, "Don't leave the dome open. You're letting all the cold out." You leave the chamber, blinking against the returning daylight. Outside, a few trees cluster near the structure, part of a shaded garden designed to benefit from the cool microclimate that lingers around the yachtshell. And yes, even plants were part of the cooling strategy, acting as green insulation and, when placed just right, casting patterns of moving shade that helped keep walls cool without blocking the wind. In the distance, another tower looms. Another wind catcher, probably connected to a bathhouse or even a small palace. And suddenly it clicks. This wasn't about fighting nature. It was about listening to it. The wind, the earth, the water, the sun, each element choreographed like dancers in a climate ballet. Not battling, not resisting, but flowing together. And in the middle of a desert, where survival itself feels like a full-time job, the Persians were busy building homes that thrived. You stand in the shade of the yachtshell, looking up at the dome's curved silhouette, and think, maybe we're not smarter than the past. Maybe we're just louder. You follow a narrow path shaded by date palms, their fronds whispering secrets in the warm breeze. Ahead, you see the courtyard of a grand Persian house. Not just a home but a stage for the full air-conditioning spectacle you've been piecing together. The place is alive, not just with people but with the subtle rhythm of temperature and airflow, an orchestra conducted by ancient hands. This house has everything you've come to recognize. Thick mud brick walls, those elegant wind catchers stretching skyward like silent sentinels, and low, inviting courtyards where the heat seems to pause, unsure if it should enter. But here's where it gets really clever. Inside the courtyard, water channels trickle softly, their surface sparkling in the sun. These shallow pools aren't just for decoration or irrigation. They're cooling agents. As the hot air passes over the water, evaporation occurs, pulling heat away and lowering the air temperature. It's a natural evaporative cooler, a concept we still use in modern swamp coolers. Mainstream historical fact: Persian gardens, known as paradises or paradisa, were designed with water as a central cooling feature. These gardens symbolized life and fertility in the arid landscape, but they were also practical, creating microclimates that made summer livable. You dip your fingers into one of the pools, the water cool and refreshing. The humidity it adds to the air might seem counterintuitive in a desert, but combined with the breeze from the wind catchers, it makes the difference between oppressive heat and pleasant warmth. And then, your eye catches a strange device by the pool's edge. A simple clay vessel with thin walls and a spout. It's a mashrabiyah, a kind of evaporative water fountain designed to humidify and cool the surrounding air as water drips gently onto porous surfaces, evaporating slowly. Quirky tidbit: some ancient Persian homes included underground living quarters known as sardabs, which stayed cool all year round thanks to their subterranean position and connection to qanats. Families would retreat to these rooms during the hottest months, living almost entirely underground, where the Earth's natural insulation kept temperature stable. You wander through the rooms, noticing the thoughtful arrangement of windows and doors. The architects oriented them carefully, aligning openings with prevailing winds to maximize airflow. Small vents at floor level let cooler air seep in, while higher windows and openings allowed warm air to escape. It's a living, breathing house that works with nature, not against it. Historians still debate the exact sequence of development. Did water features come first, or was it the wind catchers? Were underground chambers an innovation in response to growing populations or climatic shifts? The puzzle pieces keep shifting, but the end result remains stunningly effective. The family inside the home is preparing for the evening meal. They gather in the courtyard, chatting softly, their laughter mingling with the sound of water and the sigh of the breeze. Plates of fresh fruit and bread wait on a low table, promising relief from the day's heat. You sit with them, feeling the cool air move gently over your skin, the scent of jasmine carried on the wind. It's a moment suspended in time, a reminder that comfort isn't just a modern invention. It's an ancient art, crafted with patience, observation, and respect for the environment. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows, the temperature shifts. The wind catchers begin to work differently, capturing the cooler evening air and funneling it deep into the house. You watch the dance of hot and cold, the invisible currents that make this place a sanctuary in the desert. And as night falls, you realize that these ancient Persians were not just survivors. They were masters of their environment, turning harsh deserts into livable homes through ingenuity and a little bit of mud. You wake before dawn, stirred by the hush of wind rustling palm leaves overhead and the distant coo of doves settling into morning prayers. The courtyard where you drifted off now glows with a soft, amber stillness, like the earth hasn't yet remembered how hot it's supposed to get. You stretch under a woven blanket. Yes, a blanket, because the night here was surprisingly cool. It wasn't magic. It was architecture. The Persians knew that temperature didn't just depend on sun and shadow. It depended on time, materials, direction, and rhythm. And today, you're going to learn exactly how they timed the beat of their survival. A servant steps lightly across the stone floor, setting out small clay cups. Steam coils from them. Black Persian tea, strong enough to wake the dead and delicious enough to make you forgive it. You sip, and the warmth hits your chest like sunrise in liquid form. Around you, the house is coming alive, but slowly, purposefully. 'Cause here, even time works differently. You follow your host into the sardab, the underground room beneath the main house. It's dimly lit, and the walls are thick, cool to the touch, like the inside of a mountain. A small shaft near the ceiling connects to the wind catcher. As you breathe in, the air flows gently past your face, like someone just opened a refrigerator door across the room. Mainstream historical fact: sardabs were common in well-to-do Persian homes, especially in desert cities like Yazd. These underground chambers were more than just cellars. They were day lounges, pantries, even bedrooms during summer. Their design worked in harmony with the cannots and wind catchers to create constant air circulation, often dropping interior temps by 15 degrees Celsius or more. But here's where the magic gets mechanical. Your guide taps the floor, lifting a hatch to reveal a shaft connecting directly to a cannot tunnel below. Cool, moist air travels upward into the sardab. Meanwhile, the wind catcher on the roof pulls warmer air out, using pressure differentials created by its multiple vents. Some badgers even had internal walls to split airflow, directing breezes one way while expelling heat the other. The effect is subtle, steady, and incredibly efficient. No motors, no fossil fuels. Just physics, mud brick, and some smug ancient engineer who probably whispered, "You're welcome," every time a visitor didn't die of heatstroke. You notice something interesting in the corner. Large clay pots buried halfway into the ground. They're filled with milk, yogurt, and herbs. Why? Because the sardab doubled as a fridge. The Earth's insulation plus the cool airflow meant perishable food could last much longer than it should. It wasn't just about comfort anymore, it was about preservation. Fringe theory time. Some researchers suggest these underground chambers weren't just practical. They were spiritual. The Zoroastrians believed in the sacred balance of elements: air, fire, water, earth. A sardab connected them all, making it a holy zone, a breathing place of order in a chaotic world. Whether that's true or just the ancient version of conspiracy Reddit, who knows? But when you're standing in the middle of a 4,000-year-old air-conditioned basement, anything feels possible. Back above ground, the day heats up fast. The sun goes from gentle hug to slap in the face faster than a poorly received wedding toast. But the house holds its cool. Outside, the thick mud brick walls absorb the heat, while small windows shaded by overhangs let in light but not warmth. It's all about angles here. Sunlight is precious but deadly if left unchecked. Historians still argue whether the Persians designed these homes primarily for climate control or spiritual purity. But honestly, when something this beautiful also keeps you from sweating your body weight by noon, it really doesn't matter. You move to another part of the house, a tall, elegant room with arched ceilings and mosaic tiles that catch what little light sneaks in. This is the Iwan, a semi-enclosed space used for greeting guests, sipping sherbet, and reading poetry aloud. You sit under its shadow, sip a chilled rosewater drink, thanks again Sardab, and realize just how layered Persian comfort was. It wasn't just about making heat go away. It was about transforming heat into atmosphere. The stillness of midday, the scent of stone and citrus, the hush of voices in shaded halls, all part of a sensory architecture designed not just to survive the desert but to turn it into a mood. And here comes the truly mind-blowing part. This wasn't a fluke. This level of architectural awareness wasn't limited to one house or one city. Across Persia, from the palaces of Isfahan to the modest homes of Kerman, variations of this same system played out again and again. Tuned to local conditions, yes, but always in conversation with the elements. You close your eyes for a second, feeling the interplay of cold and warm air across your skin. You're not in a building. You're inside a living organism, one that inhales heat, exhales cool, and wraps you in a careful, quiet balance. And all of it made from the simplest stuff on earth. Mud, straw, stone, and wind. Oh, and just a bit of ancient brilliance. The day is now in full blaze, and as you step outside the shaded sanctuary of the house, the desert sun hits you like a golden anvil. You instantly regret your decision to leave the cool mud brick cocoon, but you're chasing something, a bathhouse. Not just any bathhouse, though. A Persian hammam, one that doesn't just use air conditioning. It is air conditioning, shaped into stone and steam. You walk through a quiet alley, the walls on either side tall and inward-facing, casting long, narrow shadows. There's almost no sound here except the whisper of sandals brushing dust and the occasional creak of wooden doors, half-lidded like sleepy eyes. And then you see it low, squat and sunken, the hammam entrance. Doesn't look like much from outside. But like everything else the Persians built, it's what's underneath that matters. You duck inside and instantly the air changes. It's humid, scented with rosewater, and remarkably cool. A man offers you a towel and a faint smile. He gestures you toward the sarbana, the first chamber, where bathers rest and drink before stepping into the steam. It's a domed space with small circular skylights, called oculi, that let in just enough light to dazzle the mosaics but not enough to heat the room. You settle onto a stone bench, already feeling your body unclench. Mainstream historical fact. Persian bathhouses used elaborate heating and cooling systems called garmkhana, hot chamber, and kazina, warm water pools, with furnace rooms located far from the main chambers to control heat distribution. The floors were often double-layered, with warm water flowing beneath to radiate gentle heat. Think radiant floor heating, just 1,500 years early. You move deeper into the hammam now, into a dim, slightly warmer space. Beneath your feet, you feel the soft hum of water circulating below. But here's where it gets wild. The hammam wasn't just heated. It was cooled too. Remember the qanats? Some bathhouses had underground channels that diverted water beneath them, not just to supply the baths but to temper the heat. The incoming cool air would mix with steam, preventing the space from becoming stifling. Some rooms even had badgers connected directly to their roofs, letting warm, stale air rise and escape while cooler air circulated from below. Quirky tidbit time. Bathhouse etiquette was so important that entire volumes of Persian poetry were dedicated to hammam culture. From how to scrub properly to which stories were appropriate to share while naked and sweaty with your neighbors. Yes, that was a thing. Also, some hammams had secret passages and tunnels, used by royals and politicians to avoid prying eyes or nosy enemies with knives. You slide into a shallow warm pool, and the water wraps around you like a warm exhale. The ceiling above is a starburst of ancient tilework, teal, gold, black, and even the walls seem to pulse with 1,000 years of whispered gossip. Steam curls lazily through the air, caught and redirected by subtle vents in the walls. You begin to sweat, not unpleasantly, but in a way that feels medicinal, as if your skin is remembering how to breathe. Historians still argue whether these bathhouses were designed purely for health and hygiene, or if they doubled as subtle tools of state control. Think about it. What better place to spread news, gather intelligence, or gently interrogate someone than in a setting where everyone's disarmed, half-naked, and sipping mint tea? A young boy splashes water into a narrow channel by the wall. You follow the stream as it runs along a groove in the stone, disappearing into the floor. Somewhere, far below, a reservoir hums, fed by canets and kept at the perfect temperature by centuries of calibrated design. As you move toward the bicana, the final cooling chamber, you feel the temperature shift again. The steam fades. The air grows thinner, drier. Here, after the bath, people rested before rejoining the heat of the day. No AC, no box fans, just architectural airflow tuned like an instrument. You sit on a bench, your skin tingling, your mind strangely quiet. Then a strange shape in the wall catches your eye. It's a clay urn, almost like an amphora, built into the stone. You peer closer. Inside is a slow trickle of water, running over porous stone and creating a faint mist. It's an early version of an air freshener, but it also cools the air through constant evaporation. This little pocket of cleverness is no accident. And here's the kicker. Most of the hammam's cooling came from layout. The sequence of rooms moved from cool to hot to warm to cool again, like a respiratory cycle. The entire experience mirrored the ebb and flow of the desert outside. Hot days, cold nights, the balance of extremes. The Persian hammam wasn't just a place to wash your body. It was a machine for balancing heat and humidity, a temple of engineered tranquility. And it worked because it respected the logic of its environment, not trying to dominate the desert but dancing with it. You step outside again, towel-draped, body warm but mind cool, and the sun greets you like an old, cranky relative. But now it doesn't feel as threatening. You've been tuned like the hammam itself. Your body understands the rhythm of heat and cool, flow and stillness. And for a moment, just a moment, you wonder if modern air conditioners are a bit overrated. You wander back through the winding alleyways, your skin still warm from the bathhouse and your senses slightly floaty, like you're partway between dream and daylight. The sun is now directly overhead, casting everything in stark gold. But here's the strange part. You don't feel like you're baking. It's hot, yes, but not unbearable. Something's off. Or rather, something's working. As you make your way through the city, you start noticing patterns. Mud brick homes are all shaped a certain way. Wind catchers always face in particular directions, and open spaces seem placed with surgical precision. You're not walking through a random sprawl. You're inside a carefully constructed ecosystem, where even the streets themselves are part of the cooling plan. You reach the bazaar next, a place that should, by all logic, feel like a heat trap. Crowds, fires, cooking, animals, movement, noise. But when you step beneath its vaulted, arched roof, the temperature drops noticeably. You pause, blinking at the sudden coolness, and look up. The ceiling is high and domed, with small skylights spaced apart just enough to let in light, but not heat. Between the vaults are slits and channels, mini wind catchers, designed to draw in fresh air and flush out warm drafts. Some sections even have cannet-fed fountains burbling quietly in corners, working overtime as evaporative coolers. Mainstream historical fact. Persian bazaars were some of the earliest examples of climate-responsive urban design. Cities like Isfahan and Tabriz had markets that stretched for miles, all shielded from the sun, vented for air circulation, and sometimes even aligned to optimize seasonal wind flow. You walk past stalls of spices, dried fruits, rosewater, hammered copper, embroidered silks, and things you can't name but suddenly want to touch. The scents are overwhelming: saffron, cumin, smoke, fresh bread. And you realize that even smell is part of this sensory architecture. Strong scents mask sweat. Stone floors absorb shock. Shadow does more than block light, it sets a mood. One old man waves you over. He's sitting beside a stall with what looks like clay cones stacked in a pyramid. You squat beside him, curious. He grins a nearly toothless smile and gestures toward a funnel-shaped vessel. He taps it. Yakshul, he mutters. Very old. Very cold. Wait, ice. In the desert. Now we're getting somewhere. You follow him behind the stall to a small, squat dome-shaped structure, part of which is buried underground. Inside it's cool, not just cool, chilly. There's even some melting ice in a clay basin. You squat down and feel the air, dense and still but fresh. This, your friend explains with wide gestures, is a miniature version of the ancient yakshul, or ice pit. You've officially stumbled into the coolest, literally, trick in Persian architecture. Quirky tidbit. Ancient Persians harvested ice during winter nights using shallow basins of water in the desert. The water would freeze overnight thanks to thermal radiation loss to the open night sky. The ice was then hauled into massive yakshuls, dome-shaped structures with thick walls of mud, clay, egg whites, and even goat hair. Yes, goat hair, for insulation. Inside, ice could be stored all year. The full-sized yakshuls could be 20 meters tall, and the base sunk meters underground. Air vents were built in to allow warm air to escape while keeping cold air circulating. Some even had underground drainage so that melted water didn't warm the remaining ice. Historians still debate whether these were purely utilitarian or served ceremonial purposes as well. Some yakshuls were positioned next to Zoroastrian fire temples or community squares, leading some scholars to argue they may have held symbolic value beyond just storing popsicles. And here's where the bizarre ties in. Merchants often stored delicate perishables, like saffron, milk, rose essence, and medicines, inside smaller vaults like this one. The markets weren't just cooled by architecture. They were refrigerated, desert-style. You climb out of the cool dome and blink against the light. A group of kids rush past, laughing, their feet kicking up dust, their faces smeared with syrupy tamarind paste. You follow them a little farther and come upon a small square, a rest area shaded by a pergola of grapevines, beneath which a narrow water channel winds through the center. You dip your hands into the water, still cool, and marvel again at the scale of this city's comfort engineering. The breeze, the layout, the water, all of it works together like a system of invisible gears. And here's the wildest realization of the day. None of this was extra. It wasn't luxury. It was standard. These people weren't outliers. They were normal folks living in a civilization that treated climate intelligence as part of daily life. Not a perk. A given. And just when you think it can't get more sophisticated, your guide leans over and whispers, "Come back tonight. The roof, there's more." 'Cause of course there is. Nightfall in the Persian desert isn't just a shift in light, it's a full sensory reset. The world exhales. The air loses its heavy hand. The day's heat, like a tired old man, finally sits down. And you, back in the same part of town, feel like you've entered a different world. You make your way to the building your bizarre friend mentioned earlier, your sandals whispering over stone as stars begin to poke through the sky like little celestial pinpricks. The rooftop awaits. You ascend a narrow staircase that spirals up past thick, mud-plastered walls. At the top, a wooden hatch creaks open and you emerge onto a wide, flat roof. The city lies around you like a softly breathing beast. Low domes, tall badgers, the occasional lantern glow. And then it hits you. There. Oh. Silent. Almost otherworldly. You breathe in, half expecting frost to nip your lungs. This rooftop is not just a place to stargaze. It's functional. It's an air trap, but in the best way. Thick parapet walls line the edges, redirecting wind into the space. There are small openings in the floor, vents that connect to rooms below. Warm air from inside rises and escapes through these outlets while cooler air is drawn in, creating a slow, steady draft. Mainstream historical fact: Persian homes were often designed to use their rooftops as nighttime cooling stations. Families slept up here during hot summer nights. The thick mud brick walls below had absorbed the sun's heat during the day and were now radiating it outward, away from the interior. The result: the house below steadily cooled, and the rooftop above became the bedroom of choice. You stretch out on a woven mat, the stars above spinning softly. Around you, other families have started setting up. Clay lanterns flicker. A mother fans a baby swaddled in linen. A father sips sherbet made from sour cherry and cold well water. Quirky tidbit. Some ancient Persian homes had star maps etched into their rooftops. Not for astrology or wish-making, but to help with calendar keeping and farming schedules. Roof sleeping wasn't just practical, it was educational. Kids learned the constellations between gulps of ice water and bites of flatbread. But the real magic of the rooftop wasn't just comfort. It was thermal memory. The building remembered the heat it had absorbed, and then let it go in measured doses. Like an ancient stone brain. Below you, in the house you climb through, the walls are thick, maybe half a meter more. Made from mud brick, packed with straw and water, and dried in the desert sun. During the day, those walls soaked in the sun's heat. Slowly, steadily. And now at night they're releasing it. Outward, not inward. This process is called thermal lag. And it's one of the quietest, most powerful tricks in ancient Persian architecture. Historians still argue whether thermal massing was intentional or simply a happy accident of the materials used. But let's be real. When a society builds ice pits in a desert, you have to assume they understood how to manage heat. A soft breeze curls past your ear, and you notice something strange. That clay jar sitting nearby. Sweating. Literally. Water is slowly seeping through its porous walls and evaporating, cooling the air around it. This was the Persian version of a swamp cooler. Low-tech, high-impact. You lean over and place your palm on the surface of the jar. It's cool to the touch. Cooler than the air itself. Multiply this by dozens of such jars, arranged cleverly through a home or courtyard, and suddenly you've got a passive air conditioning system that never once needed a single volt. Then there's the wind. Constant, purposeful, redirected. Those tall wind catchers you saw earlier. At night they reverse function. Instead of drawing air in, they help push hot air out. Their vertical shafts create upward drafts that continue to pull warmth from the rooms below even after sundown. You smile. It's almost annoying how good they were at this. The rooftop becomes quieter now. Someone nearby is playing a reed flute, soft and warbling. A dog barks once, then quiets. Someone snores. Above you, the stars wheel lazily. Below you, a home breathes out heat and breathes in silence. You start thinking about modern buildings. Sealed boxes that need fans, vents, buzzing machines. And here you are, comfortably lying in open air, cooled by nothing more than shape, clay, and shadow. You don't want to get too philosophical about it, but it's hard not to. These buildings weren't fighting nature. They were having conversations with it. Every curve, every wall, every vent was built with climate as a partner, not a problem. A child nearby mumbles in their sleep. The clay jar continues its quiet sweating. Somewhere, far across the rooftops, a wind catcher whistles softly. And you lie back, arms folded behind your head, knowing you've just experienced a type of comfort modern cities are still trying, and often failing, to recreate. The roof was never just the top of the house. In Persia, it was the final, crowning touch in an entire architectural system dedicated to turning heat into harmony. Morning creeps in gently. You don't wake to an alarm or an air conditioner clicking off. You wake because the color of the air changes. The deep indigo of nightlight fades to gray, then rose gold. A rooster calls from somewhere far off, echoing down stone alleys and bouncing off domes. You blink open your eyes, still lying on that wide rooftop, your mat a little dewy from the night air. The city below hasn't stirred yet. But even now, before the sun breaks over the horizon, the architecture is preparing for the day ahead. You sit up slowly, the chill of early dawn brushing your skin. The breeze that cooled you all night has started to shift. It's subtle, but it's happening. The thermal dance has flipped again. Walls that exhaled heat overnight will now absorb it once more. The cycle continues, tireless and silent. You make your way back down the stairs into the home below. It's cooler than you expect. The windows are still shut, but air flows slowly, softly, as if the house itself is breathing in meditation. What you're now noticing is a kind of rhythm, a daily choreography between heat and structure. You're starting to understand. This isn't just passive cooling. This is active cooperation with the environment. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Persian cities were designed with time of day in mind. Narrow alleyways cast long shadows. Courtyards were placed to catch morning or evening light strategically, and even door placements factored in wind direction. These choices weren't aesthetic, they were thermal survival strategies. You're ushered into a small breakfast area. Yes, still in that same home. A copper tray rests on a short-legged table. Warm bread, dates, sheep's cheese, and a glass of sweet black tea. The host smiles and gestures toward a corner. Sit there. Coolest spot. You obey and yep, he's right. It's like a tiny pocket of spring breeze. Oh. The floor beneath is just above a buried cannet. Remember those underground channels from earlier? And the slow-moving water beneath the stone acts as a natural heat sink, keeping the surrounding surfaces chilled. You eat slowly, watching a small cat stretch in the sunbeam just outside the door. And then your host shows you something even stranger. He lifts a flat clay tile from the floor, like a trapdoor, and underneath is a subterranean chamber barely tall enough to crawl into. Cool air rolls out, brushing your face like a whisper. It smells faintly of earth and mint. This, he says, tapping the floor tile, is the sardab. Quirky tidbit. Sardabs were basement chambers dug into Persian homes, always located on the north-facing side, and often lined with lime plaster or sealed clay. They acted like ancient refrigerators, storing perishable goods, or in some wealthier homes, serving as literal underground bedrooms during peak summer heat. People would sleep down there during the day and surface only when shadows stretched long again. You poke your head into the chamber and shiver. It's easily 10 degrees cooler down here. The sardab doesn't need electricity. It doesn't buzz or hum or leak coolant. It simply exists, built to perfection, hugged by earth on all sides, vented in just the right spots to keep it fresh and dry. Historians still argue whether the sardab concept originated independently or was influenced by earlier Mesopotamian cellar designs. Either way, it became a cornerstone of thermal architecture in the Persian plateau. You sit beside the opening for a while, watching as sunlight begins to touch the tops of the wind catchers. The city stirs. Donkey brays. Someone yells, "Sabzi!" Green herbs for sale. And once again the system shifts gears. Doors are unlatched. Shutters open strategically. Some buildings have wooden screens with elaborate latticework, called mashrabiyah, to let light in but block heat. In richer homes, colored glass windows send rainbows skittering across floors. Shade and color mix. Light isn't fought, it's curated. You decide to take one last walk before the city fully wakes. As you wander through the tight lanes, you realize how much of the Persian cooling system is invisible. It's not in shiny machines or massive ducts. It's in geometry, in habits, in brick and mud and air. And just when you think you've seen it all, you spot something odd. A sloped courtyard lined with smooth clay and faint vertical lines. You glance around. No plants, no fountain. Just this strange, shallow basin. An elder passing by sees you staring and stops. That, she says with a knowing smile, was once for ice. In winter. Frozen water under the moon. You realize you're looking at a Yakshal basin. The very spot where water would be left to freeze overnight during winter, then harvested and stored in the nearby dome. The shape of the walls, the angle, the orientation, all of it designed to maximize radiation loss to the cold night sky, even when the air temperature hovered just above freezing. You're not standing in ruins. You're standing in memory. The memory of a civilization that didn't just live with heat. It understood it, trapped it, released it, balanced it. And as the rising sun paints the walls in peach and gold, you realize every step you've taken through this city has been part of a vast, silent performance. Every home, street, vent, and wall. Dancers in a daily ballet of survival and serenity. You never thought air conditioning could be beautiful. By now, the sun climbs higher, and the desert heat begins to claim its territory once again. But you don't panic. You know better than to expect the city to just bake under the relentless blaze. After all, you're in Persia, the land where heat is more a puzzle to solve than an enemy to endure. You find yourself drawn to one of the grandest homes in the neighborhood, its walls towering, adorned with intricate geometric patterns that cast flickering shadows like lace. The entrance is a low archway that forces you to duck, a deliberate architectural move to trap cooler air inside. You step through and enter a shaded courtyard, lush with pomegranate trees and climbing vines, the air tinged with a soft, earthy fragrance. Water trickles in a shallow channel circling the courtyard's center, reflecting dappled sunlight. It's a small but essential oasis amid the stone and mud. You sit on a low bench beside the water, feeling the cool air brushing your skin. The courtyard's thick walls shield you from the sun's direct rays, and the gentle breeze that sweeps in is no accident. It's guided through narrow openings high in the walls designed to funnel fresh air downward. This is convection at work. Hot air rises and escapes, pulling cooler air into the shaded spaces below. Mainstream historical fact: Persian houses often centered around such courtyards, which were the heart of family life. These open-air rooms provided shade, ventilation, and a private sanctuary from the bustling city outside. The ingenious use of water and greenery in these courtyards helped lower temperatures through evaporation and transpiration, a natural air conditioner long before electricity. As you explore, you notice something unexpected. The walls here are not smooth. They're thickly textured, coated with a mixture of mud and straw that's cracked in beautiful, irregular patterns. You touch it, rough but cool under your fingers. Quirky tidbit: some ancient builders added crushed camel hair or even egg whites to their mud plaster. Why? It strengthened the walls and made them more resistant to cracking. Plus, the straw and fibers helped trap tiny pockets of air, which acted as natural insulators against heat. You run your hand along a corner where the wall meets the floor and spot a small niche, a recess built into the mud brick that was used to hold earthenware jars. These jars were partially buried and filled with water. Over time, water would slowly seep through the porous ceramic and evaporate, cooling the surrounding air. Historians still debate how much these evaporative cooling methods contributed compared to passive ventilation alone. Some argue that this was the earliest form of mechanical air conditioning, while others see it as a clever but limited technique. You stand and move toward the Badger, the wind catcher tower looming above the house. Its tall shaft splits into several smaller openings, each oriented to catch the prevailing wind from different directions. The tower funnels air down into the home, where it sweeps over cool water basins, picking up moisture and dropping the temperature inside. You glance up, imagining how the wind dances through those vents, swirling and spinning before it finds its way down. The entire system feels alive, like an ancient, breathing organism designed to keep you comfortable against all odds. As you prepare to leave the courtyard, you catch sight of a small tool resting on a ledge, a wooden frame with thin, tightly stretched goat hair. Your guide explains that this was used as a primitive screen to filter dust and insects while allowing air to flow freely through open windows. You chuckle to yourself. Goat hair screens. Just when you thought you'd heard it all. Walking back into the maze of alleys, you feel a new appreciation for the city's quiet genius. Each element, from the giant yakshals to the tiny water jars, worked together like parts of a well-oiled machine designed by humans who not only survived but thrived in one of the planet's toughest climates. And through it all, you realize that ancient Persia's answer to air conditioning wasn't just mud and water. It was knowledge, patience, and a deep respect for nature's rhythms. By midday, the city seems to slip into a trance. Streets empty. Markets go quiet. Even the birds slow their songs, retreating into the thickets of overgrown courtyards. You too begin to feel the weight of the heat, not harsh or punishing, but insistent, like a heavy quilt laid across your shoulders. So, naturally, you do what any wise local would. You go underground. Your guide gestures toward a narrow stone stairway beneath a shaded arch. You duck down into it and descend slowly, the temperature dropping with each step. There's no artificial light, just dim shafts of sunlight filtering in through angled slats above. The stone beneath your feet is cool and worn smooth by centuries of use. Welcome to the Kanat Tunnel, the beating heart of Persian air conditioning. You've seen the surface openings and heard tales of ice and water, but now you're inside the machine, down where the magic hums like a whisper. The air here is startlingly cool. Not cold, not damp, just perfect. A trickle of water runs beside you in a narrow channel no wider than your palm. The walls curve gently overhead, close enough that you could touch both sides with outstretched arms. But there's no claustrophobia here, only a sense of marvel. Mainstream historical fact. Cannons were developed over 2,700 years ago and remained in use for millennia. These sloped tunnels carried water from distant mountain aquifers down into cities, using only gravity. They didn't just irrigate farms, they formed the veins of the Persian cooling system. You pause where a vertical shaft drops a beam of sunlight from the surface. It's through these access holes that workers once entered to dig and maintain the cannons. These shafts also served as ventilation chimneys, helping draw air down from wind catchers above, across the cool water, and then into the buildings. Quirky tidbit. In some cannons, especially the older ones, clay jars filled with herbs or crushed rose petals were placed along the tunnels. The idea wasn't just spiritual, it was scent-based cooling. As air moved past the jars, it picked up those delicate aromas, making the incoming breeze not just cooler, but scented like a desert garden. You lean against the wall, eyes half closed, letting that breeze brush across your face. It's a strange sensation, a chill that carries history. Historians still argue whether these underground networks originated entirely in Persia or borrowed techniques from earlier Egyptian or Babylonian water systems. Some point to signs of cross-cultural influence, but the scale and complexity of Persian cannons set them apart. You continue walking, eventually emerging in a room carved directly into the earth. Here, an old merchant stored dried goods and fruits, the walls lined with shelf niches. Even in this summer heat, the pomegranates and apricots look like they were picked just yesterday. This is more than cooling, this is preservation. Entire food systems thrived because people knew how to turn the earth itself into a refrigerator. Your guide smiles and gestures upward again. "Let's go back," he says. The city is stretching its arms. Sure enough, as you ascend into the light once more, the world is shifting. Shops reopen. Children run barefoot along the alleys. Vendors call out with trays of chilled melon, their voices echoing like songbirds. And now, with your new perspective, you start to notice even more. Little vents carved low into walls, the way some rooftops are painted white to reflect sunlight, or covered in thatch mats dampened with water. Every surface, every angle is intentional. Nothing is wasted, not even the shadows. A woman passes by carrying a folded mat. She's heading toward the mosque, but not for prayer. It's to nap. You ask your guide about it and he grins. The mosque's courtyard is the coolest place in town this time of day. They even built a shallow channel through the floor, right beneath the tiles. Feels like sleeping over a stream. You're not surprised anymore. You expect brilliance at this point. Even the bazaar, once a swirl of bodies and color, feels calculated. Openings high above act as chimneys, allowing hot air to escape. Stalls near the center are slightly elevated. Hot air rises, and those platforms stay cooler. Canopies are layered to trap dust while letting air flow through, almost like the gills of a giant fabric fish. And then there's the ice. Yes, in the middle of a hot summer day, one vendor proudly unveils a slab of harvested winter ice, brought from the nearest yakshal. He chips off pieces and drops them into clay cups filled with sweetened syrup and basil seeds. You sip one. It's more than a drink, it's time travel. Cooling, flavor, and ritual, all bound together in a single mouthful. You smile, watching the flow of the city as if seeing it for the first time. It's not modern in the way your world defines it. No thermostats, no fans humming through the night, but it's smarter in a different way. It's designed to work with nature, not fight against it. It uses time, space, water, wind, and even smell as tools in an elaborate balancing act. And through it all, one idea lingers in your mind. Maybe air conditioning was never meant to be loud or invisible. Maybe it was supposed to be art. You wake from a short nap under a tamarisk tree. Yes, you've given in to the local wisdom of sleeping through the heat. The branches above you sway gently, each leaf tuned like a tiny wind chime to the rhythms of desert air. There's a reason this particular tree is so popular here. Its feathery foliage offers dappled shade, but more than that, it sweats, releasing moisture through salt glands that draw water from deep underground. The salt collects on the leaves, crystallizing over time, and every breeze that brushes past lifts that salt into the air, subtly cooling the space beneath. It's nature's way of whispering, "You're welcome." You stretch, slowly rise, and make your way toward the edge of town. Here, the architecture changes again. Lower buildings, more exposed mud walls, and rows of ancient wind catchers still standing like stoic sentinels. Their blades, once lined with wooden flaps to guide airflow, now stand empty. But the logic behind their shape remains. Those tall, narrow towers could vacuum even the laziest breeze from the sky and channel it downward into rooms lined with thick, sun-dried mud brick. Mainstream historical fact: wind catchers, badgers, were often positioned in pairs or quads, with different orientations. This meant that no matter which way the wind blew, at least one would always catch it. Some wealthier homes even had adjustable flaps inside. Think of it as an early version of directional vents. You wander inside one such home. It's abandoned now, the roof half collapsed, but you can still trace the structure's secrets. A domed ceiling, a recessed floor basin lined with stone, small side vents near the base of the walls, and those familiar earthen jars placed in shaded corners. You crouch beside one, peering into its dark hollow. The air inside is still cool. Quirky tidbit: in some desert homes, the Persians would place small clay bowls filled with rosewater atop windowsills or around courtyards. The breeze passing over them would not only cool the space but perfume it gently, turning the scent of sweat and sun-baked earth into something almost holy. As you sit, a thought drifts into your head. How much of this knowledge was passed down through poetry rather than blueprints? You remember hearing a line from a 10th century Persian verse: "The wind shall pass through my house as the water runs through my veins." The poets understood these things. They didn't just record facts, they translated climate into metaphor. Historians still debate how these ideas spread beyond Persia's borders. Some claim early Islamic conquests carried them westward into North Africa and southern Spain, where you later see echoes in Moorish gardens and Andalusian villas. Others suggest parallel evolution, arguing that necessity births brilliance wherever sun and stone collide. Either way, the Persians were first to weave it all into a comprehensive system. Wind, water, geometry, mud, and shade working in silent symphony. You rise from the dust and look toward the mountains. Out there, hidden in the rugged folds of rock, are the aquifers feeding these qanats. Some claim there are secret caves where cold air flows endlessly, undisturbed by time, like nature's own air conditioner. A local boy passes by on a donkey whistling. His jug is strapped tight to the saddle, its surface damp from the slow evaporation that keeps its contents cool. You ask him where he's going. "To the mill," he says. "Down by the qanat. My uncle's grinding wheat." You follow naturally. What else are you going to do? Go back to your digital world of noisy fans and power bills. The mill is a modest stone building tucked into a grove of tamarisk. Inside, a narrow wooden wheel turns slowly, powered not by wind or muscle, but by water running from a diverted branch of the qanat. The flow is soft, deliberate. It doesn't splash or roar. It glides, cool and calm like everything else in this place. You dip your hands in. It's almost cold. Almost. You notice again how the building is designed. Thick mud brick, few windows, all positioned high to avoid sunlight while catching the breeze. The floor is sunk slightly below ground level, and across the far wall, there's a small, gently dripping ceramic pot with a lip that lets water spill in slow, rhythmic droplets onto a flat rock. It's not functional, not anymore. But the sound is hypnotic. You sit cross-legged in that humble space, the drip 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 lulling you. And as the air brushes past your cheek, cool, scented faintly with dust and clay, you think to yourself, this was never just about staying cool. It was about being in rhythm with your world. About reading wind like a language. About designing your life around movement and stillness, heat and water, silence and whispering air. You glance up at the wooden beams above, darkened with age. The Persians didn't invent air conditioning the way modern folks might define it. They didn't plug it in. They invited it in. They coaxed it with shape and shadow. They built homes like they were inviting nature to dinner, setting the table with geometry and grace. You smile. 'Cause now you understand. Evening tiptoes back into the city like a familiar guest. No fanfare, no drama, just a gradual softening of light and air. The sun, exhausted from its hours of dominance, finally retreats behind the mountains, throwing long lavender shadows across domes and mud walls. And now, for the first time all day, the city breathes easy. You're walking again, but slower this time. Your sandals brush against fine dust as you make your way back through the alleys that now glow in golden tones. The mud brick walls, which earlier radiated heat like 1,000 sleepy dragons, are now cool to the touch. You drag your fingers along one, the clay still holding onto that subtle breath of moisture drawn from the air by evaporation. The genius of it hits you all over again. These walls didn't just sit there. They worked all day, absorbing heat in silence like great sponges of time. And now they give it back slowly, just enough to warm the night air without suffocating it. This is what modern HVAC systems still can't do. They blast, they roar, they correct. But these ancient homes, they adapt. They remember. Mainstream historical fact. This thermal behavior, called thermal mass, is a well-known feature of adobe and mud brick construction. The Persians understood it intuitively and designed buildings that played the long game, soaking up heat by day and releasing it gently after sunset. You turn down a quieter street, where the scent of grilled lamb and roasted onions wafts through the air. Laughter trickles from inside one of the homes, its door slightly ajar. Inside, the family sits on thin cushions around a low table, eating slowly, fanning themselves not out of desperation, but habit. A breeze wafts through an open window, carrying with it the fragrance of basil and charcoal. The walls around them breathe in and out, regulating the air like a second set of lungs. Quirky tidbit. In some homes, clay pots were filled with cold river stones collected at night and placed strategically in corners to cool the room further. These stones would absorb heat during the day and chill again by night. Persian ice cubes without the melting. You pass another courtyard and spot a woman sprinkling water over the stones. Not for cleaning, no, this is something else. She smiles and waves you in. She explains in slow, careful words. When the water touches hot stone, it cools the air. Steam rises, but gently. She's not just cooling the air. She's performing a ritual. Inside the home, hanging near the ceiling, is a rope-pulled flap, a kind of early damper that controls the air coming from the badger. Her husband demonstrates, lifting the flap to let more wind in. The room darkens as the tower hums softly, channeling the night's cooler air downward. Historians still argue whether this control over airflow was advanced engineering or simply instinct born of generations of trial and error. But when you're standing under it, watching the flap wave like a lazy hand, you know the answer doesn't really matter. You exit the home, full of dates and tea and gratitude, and head uphill. There, on the city's edge, sits an ancient stone platform overlooking the rooftops. You climb one deliberate step at a time until you can see everything. The domes, the towers, the courtyards, the flickering lamps. A city glowing without glowing. A city cooled without wires. A city that doesn't scream to keep you comfortable. It whispers. You settle onto the platform, the warm stone beneath you slowly losing its heat to the stars. Overhead, the sky blooms into a full display. Stars you forgot existed, laid out like grains of rice scattered by a generous hand. Someone nearby plays a reed flute. You can't see them, but the notes wind around you like a breeze. You lie back and exhale. The city, once so foreign and mysterious, now feels like a second skin. You close your eyes. And somewhere in your half-sleep, you picture a young Persian builder standing ankle-deep in mud, mixing straw and earth with his bare feet, whistling softly as he sculpts walls that will outlive empires. You see a child chasing shadows in a courtyard, splashing water with their hands. You see a merchant uncorking a jar of cold, rose-scented water on a blistering day, smiling as his customer takes a grateful sip. It all makes sense now. This was never about air conditioning in the modern sense. This was about crafting a world that loved you back. And it did. Now, as the flute fades and the city slips into sleep, so should you. Let the rhythm of slow breath mimic the flow of water through ancient canets, steady and cool. Let the memory of shaded courtyards and whispering towers wash over you like a breeze drawn from clay and sky. No more harsh lights. No more digital noise. Just the gentle reminder that long before wires and thermostats, people found ways to live in harmony with the land. Not by overpowering it, but by listening. By learning how wind moved, how water fell, how shadows stretched across walls like time itself. Let that knowledge settle into your bones like cool earth. You're not just resting tonight. You're part of something older, quieter. You're lying in the palm of a civilization that didn't rush, didn't panic, didn't overheat. So let your thoughts slow. Let your muscles melt into the bed like mud pressed into mold. Feel the last traces of heat lift off your skin, replaced by a hush that hums from desert floors and domed ceilings. You've walked the alleys. You've cooled your hands in canet water. You've sat under stars that watched Persians design the first breathable homes. Now drift. Let go. Let the fan hum in the background like a wind catcher whispering through the night. And when morning comes, remember, you carry centuries of cooling wisdom in your chest.